Hello and welcome to the 296th episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark. I am the green tank, and I am joined, as always, by my fellow tanks, Neilan the orange tank.
Hello.
And Kellen the red tank.
I am here and cold.
Well, that's a good way to segue into what I was going to say, because I am here with a cold, I believe.
Oh no,
I must have been
made
snuggling.
its way to you.
Yeah, snuggling a little too closely to Neilan, and now I've picked up his ailment. I am drinking, I'm going to show for anybody watching on News Channel 8, organic throat coat. And Kellen will make a joke in his mind, but he will not say it. He will not say the joke that he's thinking of. But this is also, in addition to all that, the second installment of our top 50 board games of all time. Last week we had 50 through 41, and today's episode will be 40 through 31. As always, we are going to be using the NKM system.
As always.
So it'll be, as always, we've never strayed from that. So Neilan will be starting, then Kellen, then me. Neilan, take it away. What is your 40th favorite game of all time?
I would love to, Mark, with my 40th favorite game of all time, which is the second and highest splotter on my list, Bus. Bus is great. I think Bus walks the line in the splotter realm of, I love the Great Zimbabwe, but the marriage of overly complex and highly chaotic, for lack of a better word, output sometimes always doesn't work for me in splotter games. It's one of the problems. Although I love Food Chain Magnate, it can be grating when things go wrong for things that are out of control. But Bus has that chaos while still being very simple in execution. Like, the worker placement system is very neat and, I mean, was, at its time, incredibly novel. Obviously, they've practically invented worker placement. And the way that all of that simplicity nets out in this sort of like simulation of a city that still can sometimes just not go your way, and if you're me, frequently doesn't go your way. The way that the game like twists the decisions you can make, whether it's the number of people you're going to transport, your position in turn order for each of these actions, and then just the cleverness of that final twist of, am I going to stop time for this round? That's just hovering as a threat over every single round of the game, I think is just such a delight. And I think the new Capstone version particularly just looks lovely. Bus is fantastic.
Agreed. Big fan of it.
It's almost like the most not splotter.
I would say so, yeah.
You could convince me it was like one of the Euro publishers that had a feisty day. Like a very feisty day.
Oh, you feel like it doesn't feel splottery. Why not?
It's just a little bit... No, I don't know. I guess you can use all your cubes in the first round and then you're dead.
Yeah, oh yeah. You can still wreck
splatter.
yourself exactly in exactly the same way.
All right. My 40th favorite game of all time is up 4 spots.
No. NKM. Oh, wait.
Nope.
Damn it. No, that's what he said.
Yeah,
no,
but
I
that's
wrote
not
down
what I
what he
meant.
said. Rewind
It's
the
NMK.
tape. You said NKM. You
I
said
know.
NKM.
I'm trying to weed out the listeners who don't care. They know it's NMK. We've always done NMK.
NMK?
Kellen.
No.
We've always done
You said
since the
NKM.
beginning.
You said NKM.
I know. Do you hear what I'm saying? I'm saying I'm doing that to weed out the people who aren't true fans.
You
who
weeded
don't
me
know.
out.
See, that's
You
what I'm
weeded
saying.
me
You don't
out.
listen
I'm
to enough
out.
shows. You're on the shows, but you don't listen to enough shows. Everybody who's ever listened always knows we go NMK. We've never strayed from NMK.
All
So
right.
I'm just saying.
All right.
I did up, but I'm cutting that part out for sure. Anyhow. So my 40th favorite game of all time is known by the name Panic on Wall Street, or if you have an earlier edition, as I do, Masters of Commerce, which is not nearly as sexy a name. This is one
I
of
don't know.
many...
Masters of Commerce, in some ways, a lot sexier.
You'll have to explain that on the bonus episode. Anyhow, so this is feels like a stereotypical or prototypical convention game. This is a game that requires a lot of people. And on some level, because of that, feels a little aspirational. Feels like a little TI4 where you have to get things just right. Although it doesn't require nearly as much time as TI4, but it does require a lot of people. It can play up to 11. Fans of the classic game Pit will sort of know what vibe Panic on Wall Street is going for. You are in Panic on Wall Street splitting into 2 teams. Half of them are investors, half of them are managers. Investors are trying to invest in the managers' companies. And at the end of the game, there will be one winning investor, one winning manager. And you're basically like buying and selling shares in these different companies simultaneously. So everybody's yelling on top of each other. So you get, again, those pit feelings of people who play that game. And then at the end of the round, once everybody's made their sales, there is dice rolling that determines if stocks have gone up or down. Some companies are more volatile than others, so you're taking a bigger gamble with them. Just a lot of fun. Again, one of the highlights of my convention-going period was the game we played at Chuck's with some of the listeners. A game I have to get back to the table. Maybe Dice Tower West. We'll try to make sure we get this done. So my 40th favorite game of all time, up 4 spots, Panic on Wall Street.
Yeah, I think of the games I know that do the clean halves with separate scoring, like Panic is the best one. And not to say that I think I know which side of that I prefer, but both halves just are fun in different ways and mesh together so cleanly.
A similar type of game, my 40th favorite board game of all time, is Pax Porfiriana. Very similar in all the ways. It has cards in it, so that's how it's similar. Pax Porfiriana, for those who don't know, is part of the Pax system of games. I couldn't define it if you ask me, but it involves a problematic / racist designer and historical, perhaps, gameplay. No, there's card tableaus, there's crazy card interactions. Most people are familiar with PAX Premier 2nd Edition, which I think peaked above, even outside the PAX community audience. But PAX Porfiriana is its crazier, weirder, more innovation-like brother about the Mexican Revolution and the dictator. I don't even know. I think you play like businessmen in this game, which is known as a hacendado. And there are basically different leaders who are trying to take over Mexico and topple Diaz. And at any one point, you're trying to sort of advance an agenda towards one of these end conditions, but everyone else might be doing the same for a different leader. And it just, every turn is so tactical. You can never get caught up in the minutia of what's happening because stupid is constantly happening to you. Get a gun store. Someone takes over your gun store. Fantastic game. One of the most complicated card games I would believe in existence. And one that if you like innovation and have never dipped into PAX, this would be an amazing place to go. This is one we have not ever all played together, which I find deplorable. Deplorable. That is shame on us. Shame on Mark. Shame on Neilan. Shame on Christina. Not shame on me, because
You have played it.
I have wanted to play it with you, and you guys say, no, we want the boring Premiere 2E version because it's cleaner.
That's exactly me, yeah. I'm always clamoring for more Premiere with you.
And that is my 40th favorite board game of all time, Pax Porfiriana 2nd Edition.
Can we get to Christina
Pax
on
Porfiriana Collector's Edition is what I have, 2nd Edition. Can we get what?
Can we get Christina on for a clarification on the pronunciation of Hacendado, or whatever you said?
Hacendado?
Hacendado?
Hacienda is a different word than Hacendado, okay?
That's okay. I'll buy that.
I'm sure every word I mispronounce. I do caveat, and this is not glib. Kellen is very glib. I have no interest in thematic. I have no interest in historical themes. Like, literally, you could strip this of its theme, and the thing is, thematically, it helps you understand the game, like some of the things that are happening, military. But
it's not a draw for you.
It's not a draw at all. So if you're worried about, the cover, which is like Power and Empire in Mexico from 1898 to 1920, who the thinks that's a draw?
You're speaking my language. That's
who
me right
thinks
there.
That's a draw?
Give me dates. Give me 2 years next to each other, and I'm in, baby.
I can't believe it.
My 39th favorite game of all time is In the Year of the Dragon. This is one of my favorite Stefan Feld games. I thought this was maybe had a chance to slip down my list based on my most recent play of it, where I was excited to show it to Christina, and I think she kind of hated it. But in some ways, it just bolstered my love of it, because it's just so harsh, and I did so badly, and I just love that. I don't know why. I just love that feeling in this game. You are barely keeping your head above water. You have the entire timeline of what's going to happen. You know, in round 4, there's a famine coming. You know, in round 7, you're going to have to pay a bunch of money to the taxman. And yet, just keeping every little person alive, keeping all your resources in check, keeping your turn order appropriate in order to accomplish all of this, it's just one heavy decision after another heavy decision, and you barely feel like you can accomplish any of it. Kudos to anyone that gets through a game of In the Year of the Dragon without having any losses in their palaces because I just don't see how it's done. Kellen, we have to play this at some point.
I feel like that's what the top 50 has become, is us going, why haven't we played this
Yeah, that is true. But this one, I feel for some reasons especially, I just think you would like it. It's just so, every decision is so impactful. You don't really have that many. It's effectively 12 rounds of worker placement, but it's so good.
I think you tried to make this happen, and we can shame Dean for it not happening because he didn't want to do it last time you brought it up.
But yeah, that is In the Year of the Dragon, my number 39.
So these top 50s are often a journey into discovery, into like introspective discovery of what you actually like. Because if you told me that this game, my 39th favorite game of all time, and new to the list, and also a double crossover, would have made it to the top 50, I would have not believed you, especially when it first came out, when all the hype was going on and I was a little low on it. But Ark Nova is a game that I find myself really enjoying playing. This is also bolstered by the fact for sure that it's available on BGA. I don't know if I would have the reps required to like really get into it if I was relying on in-person plays because of how sort of big it is in terms of the relative time that it takes. It's not like a 3-hour game, but it takes some time and it's a big table presence. But playing it on BGA and really sinking my teeth into it has allowed me to really enjoy it whenever somebody offers a game on our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord in the digital games channel of Ark Nova. I find myself drawn to it. I've enjoyed it. The tableau building is always fun. There always seems to be different ways to attack the strategy in it. I have to admit that the theme is also very appealing to me. I love like every card being a different animal. That's very cool. And so yeah, my 39th favorite game of all time, Ark Nova, a double crossover with the Orange Tank.
Yeah, great game. Great game, and I totally agree with you. It's not a game that I love playing in big player counts on BGA because it tends to move slower as an async, but definitely have only appreciated it more based on playing it more on BGA.
All right, my 39th favorite board game of all time is new to my list this year, and it is a reversion of a trick-taking card game. This is one that just works for me. It just is pleasing to me at very high player counts. So when I think of trick-taking games, I mostly think of 3 and 4 player games. But the best player count for Seas of Strife, which is a really dumb name and a dumb retheme, so dumb Rio Grande. But we can get to that. Seas of Strife is a trick-taking game that I think is best with 6, best with 5, or best with 6. It is more of a party silly LOL 6-nimped experience than it is a trick-taking game, but essentially you are trying to not collect cards. And when you play out in a suit, someone must follow you if they can. But if they can't, they play in another suit, and then the next player has 2 options of suits to play. But the twist is that whichever card color, whichever suit has the most cards in a trick, the highest card within that subset will win the trick. So that means, similar to other BGB classics like Fuji Flush, once someone starts another color, everyone starts shouting at them to support or not support. And my favorite thing to do in this game is to say, I support you, Neilan, by playing a card of his suit, which he definitely does not want me to do, but just to repeat over and over again, I support you, Neilan, I support you, Neilan. There is one other little twist, which is that if you play the highest card in any color suit, that nullifies that suit's eligibility to win the trick. This is the original Strife rules and not the bad Texas Showdown rules. So this game was called Strife. This game got up to Texas Showdown. They mistranslated it. Then it came back. It is now Seas of Strife. It is great. The production is meh. It is the first game in more than a year that has me planning a Pokemon retheme. And if that's not the high watermark, if that's not going on the box cover so good, it deserves a Pokemon retheme. I really like this one, and I think that if you like trick-taking at all, or if you like stupid, dumb card games that work at high player counts, you will not have a bad time with Seas of Strife.
I got a chance to play this when I was in town for the wedding a couple weeks ago with Kellen. And yeah, really, really enjoyed it. And what he's talking about in terms of like the table talk and the people sort of trying to sway the play of other players on the table was really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. And really simple to play as well, and teach. Really, really fun game. I totally endorse it.
My number 38, I feel like of all, and I may have to check myself on this, but of all the big box like Troops of the Map games I have, Inish, to me, feels like the most accessible, and I think that's kind of what I love about it. There is a little bit of fiddliness to the win conditions, but there is a simplicity to the way that the game plays out in its card drafting system. Draft a hand of cards, every card tells you what it does. The combat, a little bit funky, but it is really just a negotiation exercise in determining who stays behind when people are in conflict in a given area, and at any point you can stop it. You could decide to peacefully cohabit a region together. And what you're trying to do is just sort of try to find the person that is the closest to one of the victory conditions and stop that at any cost. I know that that can be a point of contention for a lot of people, where they're it just feels a little bit like coming at the leader constantly. But the actual game in Inish is setting yourself up so you can't be stopped. And I think once you grapple with that, the game sort of escalates in a way that feels really, really clever. It also has a lot of stuff baked into the design that only really becomes apparent on subsequent plays that accelerates it. Once people realize the power of those D tokens are everything, and the game sort of progresses to a very natural, quick conclusion. I love the amount of variability that comes in through the epic tail cards, all the different locations that could be out on the map. They're subtle, but they're enough just to twist the game slightly without it feeling radically different every single time. I really love the core of what Inish is, and one of my absolute favorite Troops on the Map games.
Concur. Don't say a word, Mark. Just get to your next game.
My next game, which is the 38th favorite game of all time, and up 11 spots, and probably up, I would say, something like 311 spots from where Inish is on my list, is Hanabi. Hanabi is, again, this is sort of a theme here with Splendor and games where I played them when they first came out, thought they were okay, didn't think much of them, and then have now come back and really appreciated them. Hanabi is a game of limited communication where players play their hand of cards reverse, so they only see the backs of them, and your teammates see the fronts, and you have to play them out in a certain order. I've had a lot of success teaching this game to non-gamers. I'm always hesitant to, or I have been hesitant to do so, thinking this whole play the cards backwards thing was going to be complicated, and the whole limited communication thing would throw people off. And it's been a resounding success and got me really, really back into playing Hanabi. I picked up the deluxe Bakelite tiles.
Have you used
edition.
it?
I have used it.
I picked it up, but I haven't used it. Is it great?
It is great. It is great. I've played that game with the Bakelite tiles probably 3 or 4 times in the last couple of months and really enjoyed it. Hanabi's a classic, a modern classic for sure, and I just absolutely love it. So Hanabi, my 38th favorite game of all time.
Do you use any of the expansions, or you just play straight?
No, I've only played straight so far. Have you played a lot of Hanabi with the advanced rules and stuff?
I have not, but yeah. I have that deluxe edition, which I bought and have not played since I bought it. But you're speaking to me. Yeah,
it's great. Even and again, another game that plays really well at different player counts too. Even at 2, it's been really, really fun playing it. So
now you're not speaking to me.
You're a big 2-player person.
No, I'm not.
What? You and Christina play Hanabi. Go. Do it right now.
Right now? All right. See ya.
Yeah, break it out.
So long. My 38th favorite board game of all time is so ubiquitous that I went to an axe-throwing party event last week and went to their board game area. And what did I find? Taboo, which is not my 38th favorite board game of all time, and Codenames, my 38th favorite board game of all time. I think that it's hard to overstate. It's possible that if you told me I had to only own one board game for the rest of time, that potentially could be Codenames. And the reason being is that it tickles some board game. I'm not going to say it tickles or it scratches an itch, like Neilan would say, because that's gross.
Beneath you.
But it tickles a fancy, it
That's better.
Yeah, that's much better. What do you mean? That's way better, Neilan. Codenames works for hardcore board gamers and try-harding the shit out of it, but it also works quite well with people who don't play board games who just want to try something different. It's not a party game. It's a word party game of which everyone should have every once in a while. Don't party too hard. Party with Codenames. Probably the most important board game that has been created in the last 20 years.
I feel like if I had played Codenames in the last couple of months, it might have been on my list. It just, I've said it before, but it's a game where I think I'm done with it, and then when I get into a game of it, I always think like, wow, this is such a good one. So just need to play it more.
My 37th favorite game on my list is Iberian Gauge. Iberian Gauge, of all the train games I've played, and admittedly I've not played a huge swath of these, but I don't think that the action system could get cleaner than Iberian Gauge's. You buy stocks, you put your marker next to a train company to indicate you have a stock, and that is going to be the order of the actions in the action phase. So you just step down all of the train companies, and anyone that's invested in that train company takes an action to buy a stretch of rail for that company. It's that simple, and the beauty of that system is that it one-to-one ties investment in the company to your ability to affect that company, which is both the beauty and the curse of Iberian Gauge, where if you are invested, you can both help and hurt any company on the board. And that dynamic of deciding at any given time whether it's in your best interests to help a company to profit or just to like drive it into the mountains is great. It plays so cleanly. It plays so quickly. It is definitely my favorite train game, Iberian Gauge.
Train games. What do you
Train
think about
games.
that, Kellen?
I don't know if I would call this a train game.
Cube rail. There's trains.
I don't know. I just think that we should argue more about the classification of the cube rails system as it relates to the larger strata and structure of train games and how important choo-choo
sounds like
is.
Sounds like an episode topic.
It does. Yeah, we'll get right to it.
Upcoming.
Next Thanksgiving.
All right. From the cooperation of the card game of Hanabi, we're going to go to a competitive card game with my 37th favorite game of all time, down 2 spots. This is the high-stress party game Anomia, which is one that I absolutely love. In Anomia, you're going to have a stack of cards. They're all going to have a topic on them, like fast food restaurant or type of toothpaste. And you're going to be flipping them up in a circle with all the people you're playing against. And when a symbol on your card matches a symbol on somebody else's card, at the same time, you have to describe something that qualifies. So, like, if it's fast food restaurants and Kellen flips a card that has a diamond and my card has a diamond, I have to name something on his card before he names something on my card. It is super, super high pressure, super, super fun. A lot of shouting, a lot of people trying to get out a word, but knowing that it's such high pressure that they have trouble getting it out. They go, McDonald's, stuff like that. You get a lot of things like that going on.
Can you do that again?
If you play this game, no, patrons pay extra for that. If you play this game with Mike DeLisio, just keep in mind that he cheats because he flips the cards in an illegal fashion. That is documented. I have 6 eyewitnesses. And yeah, that is my 37th favorite game of all time, Anomia.
Anomia was, for whatever reason, especially this year, like hovering right at the bottom of my list. I was so desperate because Anomia is exactly the sort of game that I want to just push into my 50 because it's like so kind of underrepresented. Like its rating on BGG does not represent nearly how good it is. More people should be playing.
Oh, I don't know where is the rating on BG?
It's one of those games I feel like I remember just always being fairly like far off of like the top something.
1706. 6.7, that's criminally underrated.
It's like a Marmite game.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, a lot of people actively dislike it because of how pressure-filled it is for a game that feels like it should be like a light party game.
It's one of the only games that I would rate low because I am so bad at it. And I only say that because it makes it so that I don't even feel like I'm participating sometimes.
Yeah, I get that, for sure.
I know that's not necessarily the game. It's a weird one where I kind of just don't want to like weigh in because like I just feel like it's a player skill issue to some degree, but it's also like it's very shouty. So not only are you sitting there not participating, but everyone else is like screaming at you.
And you are dueling against people when the cards come up, so you feel like a loser if you get. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, I've never felt that way. That doesn't ring true to me. My 37th favorite board game of all time is a better Splotter game than Bus. And that is Food Chain Magnate, the classic. But what I will say is do not back this Kickstarter. Come on, people. Do not get got. That is uglier than the OG. We didn't think it was possible, but here we are. Food Chain Magnate is a game of restauranteering in an era that is not now. I assume it's like the 40s or 50s. It's diner time. You are delivering pizza. You are delivering burgers. You are advertising. I think one of the reasons that I love this game is that the language of the game is so different than all the other games. You're not killing. You're not delivering contracts in the Mediterranean. You are advertising to executives and hiring kitchen staff. Just the thematic feeling of it is so different that it automatically sets itself apart. What are you doing in Bus, Neilan? What do you think people do in Bus?
Running a bus company?
Oh, that, Neilan. Could be running a pizza company that also delivers burgers.
You ever think of that, Neilan?
I didn't.
Food Chain Magnate is extremely aggressive, extremely hard to play, and you can lose in the first or second turn if you don't follow one of the strategies. There is deck building, there is adjacency, and understanding what your opponents are doing. There's a strong economy in the game. Do not play with Mark or you will lose. I will play this game with 2 people. Those 2 people are Neilan and Christina. When we play Food Chain Magnate, we have a lovely time. Mark, you are not allowed to play. Absolutely love this one. Could not see it ever leaving my collection. Had amazing plays of Great Zimbabwe that now have me sort of going, should I spend my spotter time there? I don't know what the future holds, but for now, it is Food Chain Magnate, my 37th favorite board game of all time.
My 36th favorite game of all time was almost an immediate double crossover with Kellen. This is Codenames. Codenames has also slipped down my list a fair bit, maybe like 10 or so spaces compared to last year. And I think that's going to continue to be the trend. I simply have not played Codenames in a long time. And I think that the desire to do so has fallen off the cliff. And that's no fault of the game. Codenames is fantastic. It was, if not in my top 10, near my top 10 for many years. But there are a lot of other competitors in the space now. I think like since the advent of games like So Clover, Nigoichi that we played at PAX, stuff like the Crypto that kind of came in. There are just other games that occupy a similar space that I now prefer to Codenames. And yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I want to honor like how great and important a game it was for me for a long time by keeping it on this list, but it will probably be slowly slipping off. Codenames.
Double crossover.
Double crossover.
My 36th favorite game of all time is down 12 spots, but this is probably a game that doesn't mind a big drop because it's a game that is all about swinging up and down. This is Lords of Vegas. This is a game that is full of luck, full of shouting. It feels like a sort of like a Monopoly killer to me. If you're into Monopoly but want a more fleshed out hobby gamer game, try Lords of Vegas, although it's sort of hard to get your hands on. It's a game of owning casinos and going into your opponent's casinos and winning their money at the tables and big swings of luck and fortune, and just a really rollicking, fun game that I really enjoy just because you go in, it's a Vegas game, obviously, and you know there's going to be dice rolling and luck and people hoping that a certain casino color comes up in the card draw and shouting when it does or booing when it doesn't. So just a lot of fun and just a boisterous part of fun gambling game. So my 36th favorite game of all time is Lords of Vegas.
Mark, has anyone told you have exquisite taste?
Not enough people have, but if you say so, that counts double for me. So I appreciate
Exquisite.
that.
Exquisite. It's me, right? Because you guys, great. I'm going to just have to make that text bolder on my spreadsheet here. NKM. We're now at 30 font. Couldn't see it at 20. My 36th favorite board game of all time is called Rumble Nation. This is a area control game that has some mechanisms that are just lovingly crafted into a 30-minute experience that is essentially like the setup and then the payoff. And I'm sure there are other games like this, but it feels quite novel and unique in the space. You roll 3 dice, and I love this dice rolling mechanism too. You roll 3 dice. 2 of them will combine to pick the area where you will deploy troops. The other die will determine how many troops you deploy. After everyone has deployed all their troops, a predetermined order will go off of all the area control battles, and players who win the battles or get certain conditions met will get reinforcements that then bleed into other battles that slowly vein outward to all the different regions on the map. Once all the area control has been area controlled, the game ends and a winner is declared. This is such a good synthesis of area control as a mechanism. It's also so short that you can get non-area control people interested in playing it. What a good game, and something that really, I can't think of another game that does it in this length of time. Absolutely love Rumble Nation. Totally deserving of a spot. 36 favorite board game.
Yeah, this is one that I feel like, given that, especially how consistent it's been in your list, I just want to play more of. I don't think I played it since that first time we did. It sits in the back of my brain as a game I want to play more of. My 35th favorite game is Azul. Similar to Codenames, this is just a game that is a Stone Cold classic and one that I don't ever see leaving my collection. I would say the biggest difference between it and Codenames is that I will never tire of playing Azul. It's still the game that I want to break out with new board gamers, which is just because it's such a incredible production. It's so beautiful. It's so tactile that there is just this lovely vibrancy of, wow, board games of this high quality, of this high caliber, that also just play incredibly smoothly, have bite to them. Like, Azul is not just like a pleasant walk in the park. You can get messed up by good players. It's just great. It's really stood the test of time. Like, I think that despite having played any of its successors, the original is still the one I keep returning to. That's Azul.
I realize now that after the quiet of Hanabi at 38 for me, I've gone with two relatively shouty games with Anomia and Lords of Vegas, and that will continue with my 35th favorite game of all time, up 8 spots, Dungeon Fighter. So Dungeon Fighter is a co-op game where you're playing as adventurers going into a dungeon, trying to kill the big bad while acquiring loot. But the way that works is it's a dexterity game. As you encounter enemies, the way you defeat them is you are going to be bouncing dice onto a target that is in the middle of the table, and the closer you get to the bullseye, the more damage you do. If certain die faces come up, you're able to activate your character's asymmetric power, so that's fun. Every once in a while, you'll stop at a shop, and you'll be able to acquire equipment that allow you to make stronger attacks or heal up or whatever, and oftentimes the stronger attacks come in the form of forcing you to bounce the die in weird ways, like making sure that you throw the die from beneath the table or having another player throw the die holding onto your hand. So a lot of like kooky stuff like that. But as I've mentioned before on these top 50 lists, I've had more stand-up at the table moments with Dungeon Fighter than perhaps any game that I've ever played. I'll still never forget the time where we were at the last enemy. We were down to one adventurer. We were fighting the big bad. She was the last person up, and she needed a bullseye. We all were hoping for it. I think we'd rolled like 1 or 2 bullseyes during the course of the entire game. Didn't really think there was a chance. Like, in my heart of hearts, thought there was like a 5% chance of this happening. And she nailed it, and we all stood up and started yelling, and it was fantastic. Dungeon Fighter is my 35th favorite game of all time.
This is like the game you play because you didn't play sports as a kid but want to recount all your sports, glory days. Like, remember that time?
Sure, although I'm famously the one tank who has played a lot of sports, so that's a weird thing to say, but okay.
You're famous for playing sports, Mark?
Yeah, I am famous for that.
All right, I have no response. I should have directed this insult at Neilan. Though I'm sure he played more sports than me, too. My 35th favorite game of all time is a small box card game. It is from an Asian country. I think it's Japan.
What?
And similar to how you will never hear me utter the word trio when speaking about na-na. And in fact, I will never hold the trio cards in my hand. I declined a game of trio so that I didn't have to hold the cards in my hand, because only na-na for me. My 35th favorite game is called Wine the Film. You can find it on BGG as, Neilan, can you say it for me? It's photograph.
Photograph?
Yeah, don't have me say it. Just have Neilan say it, okay? Yeah. Neilan, can you say it for me?
Photograph.
Thank you, Neilan. Wine the Film is a amazing, thinky, very, very thinky card game out of Sashi and Sashi. in this game, you are collecting cards from rows, and you're getting to choose between, do I want to start at the right or do I want to start at the left and collect 1, 2, or 3 cards. It really matters because the order that you put cards in your hand cannot be changed except by this one specific action on your turn that allows you to move 1 card in your hand. The cool thing is that the amount of cards you take is the amount of cards you have to play, but you don't get to choose which cards you play. They are just the one side of your hand are the cards that you play. So every turn you really want to get more cards, but you're like, oh, I have to play these cards, and sometimes you don't want to play the cards. I think this is a really good small box card game for heavy Euro players, and I've had great success teaching it to people like that, like Monique of Before You Play. Really an excellent, thinky little thing. It's probably not recommended at 4, but at 2 and 3, excellent, and a card game I'm very happy to own and shout the joys of. So if you want to look into this game, remember it is called Wind the Film, or point at Neilan.
Photograph. My 34th favorite game of all time is a new entry on the list.
Drum roll. What is it? Could it be?
Eclipse, Second Dawn for the Galaxy.
New? This is your favorite game like 3 years ago, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, that was kind of the thing. So like, I had not played Eclipse First Edition in a very, very, very long time. And so I kind of had this thing in the back of my brain. I was like, should it be on my top 50? I wasn't sure it would hold up. And that was kind of the thing keeping it off of my top 50 for the longest time. It was a game that I had very, very fond memories of. Eclipse Second Edition, I needed to play that to reaffirm it, and it delivered. Absolutely. It's wonky, it's funky. I think that if I were to play it with certain people, there would be like a lot of cries of lol random and dice rolls and, oh, I didn't get the tiles I wanted when I explored. But that's baked into the 4X experience to me a little bit. You kind of have to know what you're getting into. It is an experiential game. It is one that presents a lot of just options that are not typical of this genre, like having to get to design your ships is like the selling point of Eclipse. You're adding engines, you're adding weapons, you're creating what your mini ship looks like versus what your cruiser ship looks like versus another player's. And you might be the one that comes in with small, devastating missile tiny ships versus their sort of heavily armored cruisers. And that's the fun, is creating these ridiculous combinations, throwing them into battle against each other and seeing who comes out on top. It is just unparalleled in scale. It takes a long time to play accordingly, but it's just a game unlike no other. I think there would be some people that would say that Twilight Imperium is the game that it's most like, but for my tastes, Eclipse edges it out completely. There's a little bit more Eurification to it, a little bit more engine building, resource gathering. I adore Eclipse Second Edition, and the production on this version is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
I really want to play this.
We should, yep. Add it to
We
the
should have
list.
Yeah, we should have a counter. A little bell go off every time we say that. Okay.
Yeah.
My 34th favorite game of all time is new to the list. Drum roll.
But it's not going to be as good as Neo.
What? It's not going to be, wait, what? It's not going to be what?
Nothing, sports boy.
Okay. Well, not only is my game new to the list, it's new to the world. And it's so new to the world that I don't think it's actually been delivered from its Kickstarter. And this is a surprise to me, but I couldn't help but put Tycoon India 1981 this high on my list.
Wow.
I really, really, really enjoyed this game when I played it. I've since played it a couple more times and have enjoyed it in all subsequent plays. This is a game that is, I think, being delivered via Kickstarter now, and I would encourage people to check it out. I think it didn't get very much publicity. But so it's got a lot going for it. It's got a lot of Euro trappings where you have area control, and it's got an economic side to it that is really not overpowering, but very fun. But what really, I think, does it, and it's so interesting that one aspect to a game can vault it so high in my estimation, is the sort of Knizia-esque scoring at the end. I mentioned this when I reviewed the game, but at the end of a game of Tycoon India 1981, there will be an evaluation on who has the biggest industry. So basically who has like the most money-making engine in the game. And if you win that, you are eligible for the win. And then there is going to be an evaluation of who has the most influence. So sort of like the victory points and sort of like area control winner. And if you win that, you're eligible to win the game. And if you win both of those, you immediately win. But if you don't win both, then it's going to come down to whoever has the most favor, which is another resource or victory point that you sort of acquire in a third way that you can very easily not focus on if you're trying to overpower your opponents on the other two sort of main tracks. And it's just, I've played it a couple times, and that realization that, oh, I'm winning in, the influence, or I'm winning in the industry, but where am I on favor points? Because favor points are sort of like held secretly. And knowing like, oh, I either need to pivot hard into favor points now while maintaining my lead in one of the two main tracks, or I need to try to win outright both of the main tracks. Just has been a really fun sort of like pivot moment whenever I play the game. So one that's probably not known very widely, but I would definitely encourage people to check out Tycoon India 1981, my 34th favorite game of all time.
I don't know if this game was on my list because I didn't check my list because I built this list from the ground up. My 34th favorite game is another Japanese game. It is not a small box card game. This is a weirdie, but a goodie, as they say. That's what I hope people say about me someday, maybe on my tombstone. Square on Sale. Square on Sale is one of the most beautiful games I own, first of all. It has this handmade quality to it. But it is essentially Othello combined with auctions and a little economic thing and a timing component to these auctions that feels unlike anything else. So what that means is there's a grid, you're bidding to place blocks. If you place the right set of blocks, you actually get to put your color on multiple squares of the grid between those two, like in Othello. But the auctions are running concurrently, so on your turn, you're watching each auction slowly end and having to decide where you're going to play and either extend the length of an auction or let one go. And there's this unique timing mechanism to the whole thing that feels kind of unlike anything I've ever played. This is a very odd thing, a really fun one to pull out. Looks beautiful, and just one that I have had a great time playing and teaching. I think it's too chaotic at 4, and that lowers its rating a little bit. It's also not in wide release. Amazing at 3. I probably wouldn't do it at 2 personally. And in fact, I don't know if you can. Community not recommended. Oh, I'm looking at the not recommended, but there's only one vote. That's how indie this goes. That's how weird this goes. Square on Sale. Absolutely amazing. You should check it out if you like weird games.
My 33rd favorite game of all time is a small Japanese box card game.
Speak to me.
Oh, no, sorry. It was stolen from a small Japanese
Whoa!
card game. It is Werewords.
Oh, God.
Werewords is a delight. You may know this as Insider, but Werewords is still my preferred version. I do like the additions for Werewords, and I do think that the way that the game is app supported only works in its favor. I think the app is quite clever in its design and how it dynamically adjusts the difficulty depending on the roles that get chosen. Werewords and Insider is a game of social deduction married with 20 questions, which is just such a fun, novel idea that gets people that have not played it before talking. Like, it's another game I love showing to people who are non-gamers, and I always have a blast playing it. It's a very, very, probably the most accessible, or one of the most accessible social deduction games, because it's just built around a core that everyone knows, except the twist is that someone might be working against the people trying to guess the word. Always the light, always gets people jumping at the end of the round when the reveal happens of who the werewolves were. That is Werewords.
Neilan, what version of Werewords? Like, there are a couple. Like, what? I actually have been looking to buy Werewords. So
yeah.
Which to buy?
So, I mean, there is 2 boxes, as far as I'm aware. There's just the standard box, which has terrible art, and there's the deluxe box, which costs $10 more and has good art. So that's basically, as far as I can say, is get the deluxe version, but it's kind of dumb because it costs double the price, and you're just paying for the art to not be terrible.
Done. Purchased on Amazon.
My 33rd favorite game of all time is a double crossover with the Red Tank. This is Traders of Genoa, or Genoa as it's known. Which came first? Is Traders first, then Genoa?
I think it was Traders, and then they reduced it.
Yeah,
like
I think so.
Catan,
Yeah.
you know, like
another abomination.
just call it Facebook kind of thing.
Right. So Traders of Genoa, or Genoa, is, Kellen mentioned this on the last episode, but it's a great mix of Euro plus negotiation that leans heavily on the negotiation part while keeping like the Euro part of it very, very true. Basically, you're playing a Euro game. You're fulfilling contracts. You're getting resources. You're converting them, doing all that stuff. And you're doing it by moving around the board and going to different spots. But the twist is that every sort of decision that you make when it's your turn to move the pawn around is up for negotiation. So if you really want to get a resource, but it's not your turn to move the pawns around, you can tell the person, hey, if you go here, I'll do this for you, or I'll give you this. And it's just such a free-flowing, open negotiation. Love it. As Kellen said, I wish it was a little bit shorter. And there's a system in it that can make the game quite shorter, but I wish you could guarantee like a good 30 minutes shaved off of it. And that would catapult it in my estimation. But yeah, just a great game. 33rd favorite of all time, Genoa.
My 33rd favorite board game of all time is Imperial 2030. This is, like many of my favorite games, economic underneath, or maybe not. Like there's a veneer of we're playing Risk, right? But you're not playing Risk. You're playing a stock market game, except those stocks are countries that are battling each other on the board as if you're playing Risk. The player who has the most money with a country gets to control that country and then overextend that country, not so that they can have global supremacy, but so that they can withdraw the most money to their personal money supply. So you could be controlling multiple countries in this game. You could be controlling no countries in this game. On top of that, you have a very smart rondel system. That's a word gamers like. Rondel. Let me say it again. Imperial 2030 has a rondel. Let that sink in, gamers. I love this one. It's extremely challenging on first play to understand. Everyone wants to be in control of a country, but in reality, it's more chaotic than that. Absolutely love this one. Would always say yes to it in game of Imperial 2030. And not too fussed. Imperial is as good as Imperial 2030. But why go to the past when we could go to the near future of but 7 years from now when we have all this sci-fi technology?
Exactly. Can't wait
as
for
it
my
is a sci-fi game,
Yeah.
Imperial 2030. Remember that? Remember when I got booed off the stage for claiming Imperial 2030 was a sci-fi game?
Is 7 years in the future sci-fi? I don't know.
No, this was 5 years ago, bro.
Gets less and less sci-fi by the day, I suppose. My 32nd favorite game of all time is a game I referenced last episode. I think Millefiori, the combo-y nature of it, the metaphorical shoulders that Reiner Knizia is standing on is twice as clever in the Gunschon's Clever series. Having a series of mini-games in a roll and write that you are effectively bouncing between by getting combos. If you score in certain positions in each of these games, you get to score in this game. And if you score in that game, then you might trigger the bonus that you score in this game. And you're just bouncing around your little sheet, comboing off in every single little game that can be played. I think that the roll and write selection, in other words, the dice selection, is one of the cleverest systems I've seen in a roll and write game that presents you with hard choices. Well, I could take this number that's very good for me, but then I lock out all of these other dice as options in my subsequent rolls. Just really, really clever. I think the way that it also allows you to be very cognizant of what other players need in your dice selection is also pretty unique to the genre, or at least fairly rare in the genre, which kind of makes this my de facto favorite roll and write. Twice as clever. Despite having subsequent versions come out, I still prefer Twice as Clever.
This is what all roll and writes aspire to be and never get to.
I think that's right.
All right. My 32nd favorite game of all time is another new one to the list, but it is designed by an old master. This is Uwe Rosenberg, one of his lesser-known games, and one that I got a chance to play for the first time this year.
If this is Tangram City, you can shut up right now.
It is Merkator.
Okay.
Merkator is a really interesting, again, this is another theme in my list where I just enjoy when designers take sort of tried and true systems and mix them together in interesting ways. So this is a contract fulfillment, a resource gathering, pick up and deliver game, which doesn't sound interesting on its own, but the way that Rosenberg puts them all together, really, really fresh. It's a game where you're always engaged because there's a sort of a following system where you can purchase powers that will allow you to piggyback of other players' actions. There's a lot of like cross incentives where you're trying to do things that are good for you, but also incentivize players to do things that you want. You've got an interesting time system. I'm always up for a game that has like time as a resource. And just a diamond in the rough from Rosenberg. One of my favorite Rosenbergs, Merkator, is my 32nd favorite game of all time.
It's also a very yellow box.
It is a very yellow box.
Have you played it, Neilan?
I have not.
I would play this. It's funny how all the old stuff that I saw floating around in the game groups back in the day but never played is actually the good stuff.
Yeah, what you want to play now, yeah. I feel the same way.
How did we not know then what we know now in this sci-fi future? I feel like we're speaking to the Santiago crowd right now, Mark. They just loved what you just said.
That's right.
And not referring to the place, obviously.
Right, no, they can go to hell. Santiago, Chile is my worst city in the world.
Wow. What?
How's that? I haven't ever talked about my Santiago hate, how much I hate Santiago, Chile with a passion. I love the game. Hate the city. Hate them.
I have not.
I actually love all the rest of Chile, but Santiago, hate Santiago, Chile.
We may want to cut this.
No. This has to stay.
Oh, no. Okay.
This has to stay.
Okay. Well, let's see how it pays off for you. My 32nd favorite board game of all time is a small card game. It is called Cockroach Poker, or Kakerlaken Poker Royale, as we like to say here on the podcast. In this game, there is one loser. There is no winners, just one loser, which is the best part of the game. I prefer this to other games that work really well, like Skull or New Favorite. That's not a hat! ! In this one, you hand someone a card. You say, this is what it is. This is a grasshopper. And then they say, I believe you, Kellen. You're a very trustworthy person. And then they look at the card and they pass it along to someone else who has to decide and then say, actually, it's a beetle. And they have to say yes or no to that. At some point, someone must say, or I believe you, flip the card over, revealing, and someone scores negative points. This is mostly a social experiment as you look at your friends. There is some deduction that can be deducted. Think about that sentence, Neilan. That can't, as you see, if 3 of 4 people verify it is in fact a grasshopper, one person says it's something else, there's just a little bit to go on, but it's mostly once someone has 2 or 3 negative card points, everyone is just trying to get them, which is the funniest thing that can happen at a table. Usually they're trying to get me, but that's okay because I still win anyway in my heart. My 32nd favorite board game of all time, Cockroach Poker Kakerlaken Royale.
My 31st favorite game of all time. There are a lot of Troops on the Map games on my list. This is not the highest one, but more often than not, if I wanted to play one that's got like sort of the Euro hybrid-y bent to it, it's Kemet. Kemet is a game that's similar to what I was describing in Eclipse, allows you to flex your troops in the way that you want to. It has like a tech tree, for lack of a better word, where you are getting powers that you sort of can draft before other players, and that is going to like either build you down a resource gathering path, or a heavy attack path, or a heavy defense path, or get you these big monsters that are just going to show up and wreck as they roam across the map. It is quite clean. It is a victory point race, and I just think it is still maybe one of the gold standards for Euro Ameritrash hybrid games. I adore Kemet.
And finally, my 31st favorite game of all time, down 3 spots. Its biggest claim to fame, undoubtedly, is the fact that it was the BGB Game of the Year 2019, an illustrious award we have since given every single year. And this is Blue Lagoon by Rainer Knizia. This is sort of his, as he's been wont to do, his sort of reimagining of his previous game, Through the Desert, I think that's fair to say, which is a route sort of building in the way of sort of like Go. Think of Go, where you're trying to fence in your opponent or fence out your opponent, but with some Euro trappings to it, where you're trying to connect lines that will get you resources while also trying to maintain a presence in different islands around the map. There's a lot of really crunchy decisions. I know Kellen loves that term. As well as a lot of like Euro decisions. So you've got Euro decisions, you've got more cutthroat decision making where you're balancing like I need resources, also I need to cut players out of this area of the map. It sort of makes you approach the game in two different mindsets, I find, but all concentrated in a game that plays relatively quickly and can be taught very quickly. There's not too many edge cases. It's not too complicated to play. Just a lot in there. And so, yeah, my 31st favorite game of all time is Blue Lagoon.
Fantastic game. Love Blue Lagoon.
I really like Blue Lagoon. My 31st favorite board game of all time comes to us from one Mr. Stefan Feld, a man that I besmirched for many years on the podcast and have learned to live with regret, as I think he is an underrated designer. I'm actually serious. I do believe that. My favorite game of his is called Bruges, continuing a new trend that I have just started. This game has been re-implemented by another game that will not be named, but Mark, can you name it for us?
Is it Hamburg?
It is.
Okay.
But if you want a good production, you can seek out an old copy of Bruges. In Bruges, you have so many different ways to leverage cards to score a variety of points. There are, I think, 5 different colored decks, and you're drawing cards based on their color. You're using those cards to build up Bruges. It is, I think, one that is a little bit underappreciated by Feld fans because of the cards, and there's probably more luck than a normal Feld fan would enjoy. But there's tons of interaction here. There's tons you can do with these cards. It feels multi-use, but it's not like Lagrange or Innovation where you're going to be like, what the hell do I do? It's at a nice weight. Everything you do is scoring you points, a la Mr. Feld. Just a good board game. Bruges. Love the colors. Love everything about it. Wish I played this more. And one that is only falling on my list due to lack of play, but it needs to come back out. My 31st favorite board game of all time, Bruges.
That's a great one. And that has been a great episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast.
We do declare.
This
has been a great episode. People only remember the beginning and the end.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
you got to remind them how much they like.
Start telling them at the end. This was
good. This was good.
This was good.
This was good. We're going to do that for the end of every episode, so you listeners out there can look forward to that chanting at the end. But yes, that will conclude games 40 through 31 of our top 50 games of all time. We're going to be picking this back up next week with games 30 through 21. Thank you so much for listening. You can chime in and let us know how right we were, because remember, this was good, at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord in the podcast channel. Talk about the episodes there. You can follow us on all forms of social media. Big thank you to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? And until next week, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.